pleasant good morning to everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Carlos Brown Show, right here on the Black College Sports Network. We see the panel already here. Good morning to you, Charles. Good morning to you, Coach Pettaway.
Good morning. Good morning.
Let's get right into it. What's trending on today's show? SWAC members opt in to the House settlement. We'll get the panel started on that. We'll take a look at HBCU rivalries, and we got a couple of graphs courtesy of No Chill Sports. They put out a graphic, and very interesting. Sometimes it makes you look back to a rivalry, and then we'll kind of determine what's the definition of a rivalry as far as on the athletic playing field. We'll get into that, and then look at the Game 7 coming up, NBA Finals, and I'll say this. I turned it off the other night. Normally I don't get on the officials, but I could just tell the way that game was going. OKC didn't have a shot, but a Game 7 coming up. Well, the House settlement has the SWAC has opted in, all 12 members. And Charles, there was an official statement by the commissioner. And after that happened, I kind of looked at the settlement or the things behind it. And, of course, one of the things is you can have a roster of 105. So I immediately went and talked to someone on the Southern University football staff. And I kind of simply said, what's the chance of going up to 105 members on the rosters? And he basically said, no, that's not going to happen. Mm-hmm. But what we can do is spread some of those extra scholarships out. So there we go, Charles. But the conference opted in.
Yep, the conference opted in. And I was just reading some stuff, Commissioner McClellan said it cost the SWAC $30 million as far as that's concerned. And that's I didn't know that. That's a pretty lofty number, for the Southwestern Athletic Conference, but they chose to opt in. And you're right. I'm going to talk with our athletic director Tuesday at 5:00, and I'm going to ask him kind of the same question. Is it realistic or unrealistic to increase those scholarships? I kind of already know the answer, but that's going to be the challenge for all of our schools. I was reading someone put a post out there that maybe Jackson State Ashley Robinson might roll the dice and increase their scholarship allotment. I don't know. We'll find out maybe at media day. That'll be a big question for all the ADs that'll be there. But on paper you can do this, but the reality is it feasible, possible, or is it impossible to increase it to those limits? I think on paper, yes, but realistically, are we all as members, are we going to do that collectively? I would say no, but I don't know the answer to that. We'll find out.
Right. Now, Charles, when you say it's going to cost the SWAC $30 million, they don't have to actually pay it. It's just that they won't receive that from their allocations. And so you're basically not getting the revenue that you normally would get to spread around. And I always felt like that was out of balance for the smaller schools to be paying a larger portion of that settlement. Out of that $10 billion settlement, they're making a lot of the smaller schools, man, foot the bill for that. And I don't understand that. I don't see how that's even right, because the smaller schools, to include our HBCUs, we're the ones that need money. So why make us pay the majority of the bill? I just don't think that's fair. And then the other thing that added to what you're talking about, it's going to be interesting to see how many of the HBCUs. I don't necessarily think they should go to the limit, but at least increase the scholarships for some of these sports. I mean, especially your Olympic sports. This is a prime time for some of the ADs to get on board with gender equity or Title IX and start increasing some of the scholarships on the women's side, on the female side. Because when it comes to payout, there's not a school that I know of that's going to be willing to spend $20 million on the athletes. They're not going to do that. Mm-hmm. So, they give you that latitude, but I don't think we're going to have HBCU, and it's not just the SWAC. You got a couple schools in the MEAC. The MEAC as a whole has not done it, but some of the schools have elected to participate also, Carlos. But I'm anxious to see how many schools are going to at least add more scholarships. I'm not saying go to the limit, but just add more, because now that you can increase your roster size.
Well, let's just be brutally honest. Some of us will not be able, if we're looking specifically in the Southwestern Athletic Conference, there are those that are a little bit more fortunate or well off. There are some in the conference that are not. Then you have some that's kind of in between, but it still would be a struggle. So that's why I asked somebody on the football staff, and he basically said what we can do is kind of spread some of the, some of those scholarships out between players. It won't be 105. He basically said that.
That sounds good.
But even within the conference, it's the have sometimes.
Oh yeah,
and the have nots. But it's going to be interesting to see. Now you mentioned Jackson State. I will go on a limb and say they probably won't go to the max 105, but probably a small increase. Now, that's from the outside looking in. And when you look at it, I see like FAMU and Jackson State are still offering football players from the transfer portal. So it'll be interesting. And to Coach Pettaway's point, some I call it the spring sports, or on the women's side, for us, the sports programs, probably can do something. But now it begs to ask: will alum be able to help some? They have foundations, but ultimately it's going to be everybody's going to have to pull in and help out if you want to kind of increase, the roster size and scholarships.
Right. Well, Carlos, it is where and Charles, isn't this where the collectives come into play? The different schools you can do collectives. You can use that. To me, you can use some of that money, and that's where we as alums we've got to get involved if we want to see our athletic departments and our university progress. Then we have to be involved. We have to be a part of that. We have to be part of the solution.
Yeah, you're going to need help. Here's a quote from Dr. McClellan. This is undoubtedly a significant moment for the Southwestern Athletic Conference and our 12-member institutions. As we move forward into a new era of intercollegiate athletics, the Southwestern Athletic Conference remains steadfast in our commitment to provide our membership with the resources needed to positively impact our student athletes academically and athletically. And so, you do have good leadership. I truly believe at the conference level that's the commissioner, because he has his naysayers out there, but great leadership. This is now more important than ever, and I think the Southwestern Athletic Conference has that.
Right.
Yeah, there's no doubt that Dr. McClellan has the student athlete's best interest at heart. There's no doubt about that. The question is how much, and he kind of referenced it in the statement, what can the SWAC do for the institutions to kind of help with that? The collectives, we have the 1871 collective that we've had for a few years now. We'll see. I'll talk to our AD who's in touch with the head of our collective here to see how that's going to look in terms of more scholarships, more of whatever is needed as far as that is concerned. But I think Road Dog brought up a good point. I mean, in terms of the SWAC, when we talk about SWAC football, we talk about winning the division. We talk about winning the SWAC. We talk about winning the Celebration Bowl. How many more? I mean, we're not talking about playing Alabama. We're talking about at where we are right now. How many more? It's food for thought. How many more scholarships do you think are needed for us collectively to compete in the Celebration Bowl, really with each other. I mean, there's a school in this conference right now that can't play up because they don't offer enough aided scholarships. So you have the other side of that scale too. So, I mean, we're offering 63. That's the minimum. But does it take 75? Like, if you get to 75, is that enough? I mean, 105, that's a stretch. Probably not going to happen in a lot of cases. But what is a reasonable number in terms of what you think you can compete with? Jackson won it with 63. Grambling won it with 63. How much more is needed? I think that's something we can put on the table.
I don't know if you know how to qualify an exact number, because it's coaching. That's a part of it, of course. Development. I would go out on the limb and say probably a few more. Since we throwing it out there for
10.
Thought. I would say 5 to 10.
See, I think in sports you got to have depth on your roster. And football in the sports where collision sports or sports where you're more injury prone, they got to have extra people, man. That's why I think you got to give more scholarships. In football, I think the University of Alabama, to me, they proved over the years that if you got depth, you can win, and you can win big time. Now, what happened to Alabama, everybody else started doing the exact same thing. Alabama used to be so stacked that if they lost the first and second string, the third stringer that they had there, they were just as good. They were just as good as those first stringers. But the society has changed now. That third string guy is no longer going to Alabama because of the portal and the NIL money. But so we got a lot of variables that we're fighting against right now to increase our roster sizes and to get that depth that you need in order to compete. Because what you want to do is be able to put yourself in a situation that next man up. But the next man that's going up has to be honest, he needs to be a number one prospect for you. In other words, he's got to be a quality athlete. You can't just say to go on your depth chart, I got 1, 2, 3 at this position. Is the 2 and 3 as good as the number one guy? That's what you got to have. So it's quality depth, not just the body. It's quality. That's what you got to have.
And I think to your point, I remember talking to Coach Pete Richardson, the legendary coach. He said one of the things at the FCS level, there was a big drop off from the first unit on both sides of the ball.
Right.
Then the second. But what he was able to do was to build quality depth, and the drop off wasn't as much.
Yep.
So back to the point, Charles, I'd say 5 to 10 extra scholarships would be a good number, because 20 to 25 or 30, they don't have the finances to provide that. So, even maybe 5, but 5 to 10.
Well, I also would say, even if we're saying 5 to 10, let's. And my good mentor, Emmanuel Barnes, who worked in student affairs at Alcorn, told me this. When it comes to a scholarship, what we term a scholarship, right? You can waive the scholarship to Carlos Brown, but the Southern University still has to collect that money on that scholarship. So you're talking about even 10 more scholarships just for football. That's 10 times the cost of enrollment. So how much money is that?
That's why I said.
A significant. And I think maybe we don't talk about that enough. A scholarship, LSU cuts a check, LSU Foundation that funds athletics cuts a check to LSU for $6 or $7 or $8 million just for football for all those players. I mean, that's a significant amount of money, but it's the same thing for our schools. I mean, not that amount, but I'm just saying it's still a significant amount. So even to add 5 more scholarships, that's quite a bit of an investment. And then obviously for baseball, you can do it. You can add basketball. I think it's pretty much, it's 13 scholarships for the men, 15 for the women.
You can get up to 15. You can increase men's basketball too. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so that's another couple of scholarships. I'm sure Coach Johnson would love to have that. So I mean, I think from a cost perspective, we got to look at that too. And I think we've already talked about it, but it's going to be an interesting conversation, amongst the ADs and the coaches in terms of, hey, what can we do or not do? I mean, I think that's going to be an interesting dynamic.
Right, and then the other thing with even with the settlement, remember there's there are some female athletes that are suing because they're saying that settlement does not do enough for Title IX. It does not do enough for women athletics. So that's I'm serious. This thing is, we're not seeing the end of this yet. There's still a lot more to come.
Let me go to the chat room because and good morning to EA. He says, I've said it 20 plus times on the show, and I will say it again. The effect of Title IX on HBCUs has been extremely difficult to bear. With this ruling will now do away with the requirement. What first of all, let me ask EA. I mean, he brings this up. I'm trying to see how I can phrase this question. EA, you're not saying you're against Title IX. You're just saying it's so difficult on the HBCUs. Is that what you're saying? Kind of give me a feedback on that one. But go ahead, Coach Federer, you said.
But no, they'll never be able to get rid of it now. They're not going to.
It's a federal law.
Title IX. Yeah,
right.
That's going to be there because in order to receive those federal dollars, you gotta be in compliance. So it's not going anywhere. They just got to figure out at some schools. Now you do know that some of the schools, they're making teams, club teams now, to get around it, to use that money to help balance the budget when it comes to women athletics. There's so many different ways they're trying to be creative with taking this money and at the same time maintaining their athletic programs. And it's going to hit us hard too on the HBCU level because we're not in a position to add all these scholarships on the women's side or to even give men more scholarship. Right.
It's the haves and the have-nots. And the divide is getting larger. But how do we navigate around this? It's like, okay, I have a household budget. I know what I can afford. I know what I can do. I'm not going to try to do something I know that financially I can't. So I don't know if you can find a happy medium. I don't even say happy or medium, but the divide is getting larger. It is really getting larger. So at some point, what do you do as far as HBCUs?
You have to have these brutal conversations with your coaches because these coaches are thinking it and they're chomping at the bit. Man, we can get up to another 40 scholarships. Man, how's that going? And so I know these coaches are excited about it because now that the potential is there. But then where does the reality come in when you have that heart-to-heart with your AD in terms of what this is going to look like or what it's not going to look like? I think the next 12 months is going to be interesting. I mean, this ruling just came down. And so starting July the 1st, I think you can go. And so, but we'll see. I think there's going to be some hard conversations. We're seeing some of these bigger teams like ULM dropping women's tennis.
Right. Yeah.
We're looking at some carnage already with some of this stuff. And then Title IX, you add to it. Some of these schools, the Alabamas and the Georgias, they have what they have, but they're making some tough decisions. But we're talking about schools kind of we're not even talking about HBCUs. I'm talking about just the mid-level, the ULMs, the Louisiana Lafayette's, those kind of schools, the mid-majors. How is that going to impact them? I think we need to take a look at that to see. We're already seeing schools cutting sports. And so I think that if that's the way this thing's going to be, I don't know if we're going to be cutting sports. I don't think so. But I think we're going to have some brutally honest, using your phrase, Carlos, conversations.
Right. And just think about this. The breakdown of that 20 plus $20 million. You know that right now, most of them are saying that 75% will go to football, right?
Right.
Then what? 15% to men's basketball.
Mm-hmm.
And then let me see, I had it written down, but I misplaced it. I want to say the women's basketball was only, the other sports had to split the other 5 million or something like that. But the breakdown was 75, 15, and then below 5 and below after that. That's brutal, man. That's brutal on the amount of money that you can spend on the athletes. That's how they're breaking it down. And all the schools are not, even in the Power Four, all of them have not bought into that equation, to that formula rather. Some of them schools are saying, no, we're not going to do 75 to football, and some are.
I'm still trying to figure out the last part of EA's statement, saying difficult to bear with this ruling will now do away with the requirements.
Well, I thought he meant the requirements of Title IX. I thought.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to. Okay, he'll probably.
Yeah, and that's why I was saying that's not going to happen if that's what he's saying.
Yeah, let's see. What I'm saying is, what I'm saying is if you have a student body demographic of 80-20 female to male, the athletic teams have to reflect that. With SWAC schools opting in and other FBS programs, the 22 million would not follow. It's more female student athletes or general population than the men.
Right. But see, that's just like at A&M. Carlos, when we were here, it was 8-1, female versus male.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's there. And then according to Title IX, that's how you're supposed to appropriate for the women. And that's not happening. It does not happen because of football. See, football, the number of athletes that it takes in football, they skew the number right off the bat. They skew that number right off the bat, huh?
And I've been on local shows over the years. They would love to exclude football from the formula.
Right.
But they told them, oh, no, you can't do that.
Oh, you can't do
so
that.
I think it's going to be some lawsuits again. And, for the female athletes, student athletes. We saw in Oregon, they filed a lawsuit. I think it's going to be more to come.
Oh, yeah.
This is just a mess. And what I'm going to do, I reached out to Rodney Kirshner, but he's on vacation. And maybe we can reach out to some other ADs and come on and just talk about this. It's very important. It's just tough. The haves and the have-nots. Mm-hmm. My goodness. You got to rob Peter and Paul at this juncture. We'll take a time out. Put a button on that for right now. When we come back, HBCU rivalries. And courtesy of No Chill Sports, they put out a graphic. And it was very interesting. You got 2 head-to-head and longest winning streak. And then, guys, what is your definition of rivalries? A rivalry is not one-sided.
Right, that's my point. It's got to be competitive. Yep.
And I know the Jackson State people are really high on that. They've won, 6 in a row in football? But guess what? We'll look at the graphic.
Overall, how many in a row? What's the overall? That's how I look at it now. I determine it by the overall percentages, not just you because you done won 4 or 5 in a row. No. What does that thing look like from the beginning?
You can't tell the Jackson State fans that in football. Okay. Oh, they're. You know what I'm saying? They're happy. They're happy. But hopefully this year we will have something else to talk about. The streak ends. We'll take a time out. We'll be back. You're watching the Carlos Brown Show right here on the Black College Sports Network.
I like him.
Quick, the quicker picker-upper. Bounty picks up messes quicker, and each sheet is 2 times more absorbent, so you can use less.
He's an 8.
He's a 9.
Bounty, the quicker picker-upper.
This is Brian Fulford. AD Drew and I are co-hosts of the BCSN Sports Wrap. We talk about all things related to HBCU athletics. From the games, teams, coaches, and fan interest stories, we cover it all. You can find our shows on Facebook at BCSN Sports Wrap, YouTube at MyJBN Online, and everywhere you listen to podcasts like Anchor, Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcasts. You can also find the show on the Jericho Broadcast Network's app. Make sure to download. We look forward to you joining the conversation and being a part of the show.
This is the Dean of the College of HBCU Sports, Kenyatta Cavill of Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Come mix it up in the lab where the course lecture is in session every Tuesday from 6 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time on Facebook Live, YouTube Spreaker, or the BCSN app, as we discuss all things about the HBCU sports culture, including exploring the week that was in the sporting HBCU diaspora, as well as the upcoming week of HBCU sports. With me, the Dean, the College of HBCU Sports, on Dr. Cavill's Inside the HBCU Sports Lab with Mike Washington and Charles Bishop. Course lecture dismissed.
Welcome back to this week's edition of the CarlosBrownShow right here on the Black College Sports Network. Before we move on to the next topic, I kind of want to go and want to thank Dr. Cavill in the chat room. He says it is not that Title. What is it? Title 4 will go. Title 9 will go away. However, it's about how it's interpreted under the current governmental executive administration, how it is governed, and how it is enforced. Now, this present administration, they're kind of strange, as far as I don't think they care about Title IX and all those types of enforcements. So that's an interesting point by Dr. Cavill, and he also said FCS can only provide the 63 scholarships. However, they can split it amongst 105 roster spots. Right. And that's when I said earlier, when I talked to someone on Southern's football staff, he kind of grinned. No, it won't be 105 straight up, but they could split it.
Right.
And that's kind of what they're looking at doing. So thanks a lot, Dr. Cavill.
Yeah, see, with that formula, Carlos, that means that if they do that, everybody's probably not going to get their Pell Grant back. And then all football does is supplement it, and now this kid doesn't have a bill. Because that's what we used to do it at A&M. Like in basketball. Now, I was fortunate enough to where my kids could get their Pell Grants back. But in basketball, it's a head count. Football, it's equivalency, so they can do that. They don't have to give you a full scholarship, and so they can use one scholarship and divide it up between two people. So that
means it's going to be a challenge.
Huh?
That right there means it's going to be, so you got 63 scholarships, potentially 105 roster spots. You're going to have to be creative in terms of how you do it, and
right.
that's going to make it even more of a challenge in some cases. I mean, you got to get your financial aid office involved. It could get really interesting. Your Pell Grant, your refunds, all kinds of stuff that you get involved with that to make sure that the student athlete, like you mentioned, doesn't owe a whole bunch of money. And so that's going to make it even more of a challenge for us. And maybe that's why you're probably not hearing a whole lot about it right now. Maybe on the negative side, like it's going to be a challenge getting your financial aid director involved, athletics together. Student athletes don't want to have a bill when they graduate. They want to play their eligibility, but they don't want to owe a whole bunch of money when they graduate. How's that gonna happen? And so I think that's gonna make it even more of a conversation piece.
Right. You can be creative, depending on what your major is. Number one, academically, do you qualify for any of the academic money that the university is offering? Back when we were Division II, I used the academic money. Even when we moved to Division I, I still use academic money to get kids to come in, and between the academic money and their Pell Grant, their schooling was paid for. They just weren't on a basketball scholarship. So it can be done. What you got to do, you got to get the guys who qualify academically, you got to get them to buy in. I think we talked about this on another show. Ego gets involved where the kids, oh, no, I got to have an athletic scholarship. No, you just want a scholarship where you and your parents are not paying money. If it comes from the academic side, for instance, at A&M, we have a large forestry program. And back in the day, I had athletes that would get into forestry. All right, they provided scholarships. I didn't have to give them a basketball scholarship. That's what I'm talking about, Charles, to your point about being creative. To me, that's being creative. Give me some academic money to help me put together a roster.
Yeah. I might be wrong, Carlos, but I think my own experience dealing with coaches, especially baseball, I don't know if student athletes really get into that. I think as far as how their school is being paid for, if they're on academic scholarship and they just happen to be baseball players, their school is being paid for. And I think we talked about it last week where there could be feelings involved. But based on what I've dealt with here at Alcorn, I haven't heard one baseball player say, well, if I ain't on baseball scholarship and my academics is taken care of, I'm not going to be interested in that. No, I think that's not from what I've dealt with. I don't think that's the case. They just want their school paid for, however way it's paid for. If it's on the academic side, that's fine. And they play baseball and they're good at it, that's fine. But they want to leave school with zero balance.
Yeah, right.
That's the case through academics. Then athletics, they're able to do that and be a good baseball player. Mission accomplished with that. And so I think that's from my experience. Now, what Wheeler Brown said last week, some people getting their feelings on that. I haven't dealt with that at Alcorn at all. Their school's paid for. They don't have to wait, don't have a bill, get their books paid for and all that. I think they're fine. Just in my experience at Alcorn State University.
And Charles, you know what? Even at the PWI, Carlos, in baseball, they don't give out full scholarships in baseball. You got very few PWIs that will give it out because they don't have enough scholarship until this new ruling. Now, they didn't have enough money anyway. So baseball players are used to going, knowing that most of them are not going to be on a full scholarship. You're not going to get a full. You can't put together a baseball team with the amount of money that they allow. Their numbers were never there.
And they have to be creative. In the state of Louisiana, at one time, they had what they call a TOPS program. You had good grades, and I know the baseball program utilized that a lot. In some cases in football, you got a kid's really smart, student athlete.
Mhm.
Yeah, he's on the academic scholarship.
Right.
Then you're talking about gray shirting. We talked about that before. But as we wrap this up, again, it's the haves and the have-nots. You got to be creative. But if you don't have it, financial, the wherewithal to get it done, it's not an Alabama. It's not an LSU. And so when you use that example, that's night and day. They don't have that problem.
Yeah.
They don't have that problem. But it's going to have to come a time where everyone involved who cares, they got to get involved and help whatever way they can. I'm going to put out the invite for Southern's Deputy Athletic Director to come on next week and see how this thing goes. But the House settlement, as a conference of 12 members have opted into it. Now, and I'm sure we'll come back to this part of the conversation. Now, rivalries. Because, Charles is amped up about football season. SWAC Media Day, less than a month away. We're going to see if we can get Wheeler from Baltimore. I think Wheeler doesn't like to travel too much anymore. I guess he's traveled a lot. But, Roy, as we transition into it, the rivalries. First of all, what is your definition of a rivalry to the panel?
Well, man, that's a good question. I never really thought about it. I think I looked it up. Rivalry is competition for the same objective or for superiority in the same field. So competition for superiority in the SWAC, in the state, it's a wide-ranging thing there. So for me, a rivalry is two teams in the same conference, the same state, competing for the same goal, whether it's Southern Grambling, Alcorn, Jackson, but it could be expanded, Southern and Jackson State. I think that's a championship rivalry because both of those teams have won championships. So you can expand that. So I think it's a broad definition, but to me, it's two teams competing for the same goal, whether it's in the same state or whether they're competing for the same championship.
Right.
Now, see, if that was a paper, my instructor would say, "Oh, that's too broad. You got to narrow it down."
And I was going to say that, Carlos, because remember, Alabama A&M didn't get in the SWAC until 1999, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Our rivalry with Alabama State precedes that.
Well,
and it's one of the largest rivalries we're still the largest HBCU rival. I mean, in terms of attendance, rather. So that's what I'm saying. Now, we were still in the SIC, they were in the SWAC, and we still had the big time rivalry. So it doesn't have to be in the conference now. Yeah. I think it's more, and I can't even say state, because there are some big time rivalries like Georgia and Auburn. That's a big time rival. That's two different states.
Yeah.
But now they share the same conference.
Well, the graphic, again, courtesy of No Chill Sports. Appreciate it. Longest win streaks in Division I HBCU rivalries. So we narrowed it down a little bit, but it still could, because you can see for the graph, it's not just in the SWAC, right? So they kind of looked at the classics.
What is the green box?
That's Southern Jackson State. I don't call it that, but that's a whole nother show. We'll be fighting about that. The Aggie Eagle Classic. Well, Will is not here, but it seems since 2000, it seems that the North Carolina A&T, if we read the graph, they're at 4. North Carolina A&T is probably about 3. Would you agree with that? Somewhere in, but like that.
Yeah.
Then the battle for the real HU. Well, we see a big difference is that. Let's see. I guess that's Hampton up there. Past 10. We probably could say 11. And then Hampton down at 4.
No, is that Wait a minute. I thought that was Howard and wait. See, I'm confused.
No, you see the Bison with the Buffalo, the Howard Bison, and then that's
that's Howard. Yeah.
And that's Hampton. Then you have the Battle of the Bay. Now I can make out Norfolk State. You see, I'm looking side-eyed here, and
that look like might be Howard again. Then
no, that's Hampton. That's Hampton and Norfolk State.
Hampton, yeah. Howard the Bison. Yep, Hampton.
Now,
so they got two rivals.
But now again, let's go back. Longest win streaks. See, not overall wins. Longest win streak. So the Bayou Classic, since 2000, the Bayou Classic, it looks to be even, right? Yeah. Win streaks. Then we got the Boombox Classic. Indeed, who named that? But I think that's more Coach Pettaway. The fans kind of named it that.
They did that for the bands. Yeah.
We see, and this is what I was talking about earlier on the show. Jackson State's on a 6-game winning streak, right? And they let you know about that. I get emails, all kind of stuff, poking fun. Southern at an 8-game winning streak. So if they win 2 more, then they're tied. All right. Then the Florida Classic, we see.
But that was that was different there. Now that was hard for me to believe.
Which one?
You know that Bethune-Cookman was dominating like they were over FAMU.
Oh yeah, I used to take little shots there.
Yep.
Now watch out! Don't take too much of a shot because Roy is producing.
Roy,
and he's a fan.
Yeah, he'll drop the graphic.
But Bethune-Cookman, you can see the graph.
Yeah.
On more of a winning streak. Then Prairie View and Texas Southern. Prairie View, of course, has the longest winning streak. And then we look at the Magic City Classic. And them is at the better of that.
But this is 2000. Because I thought Bama State had won like 4 in a row.
Well, they could have won 4 in a row. But again, the longest winning streaks, Alabama A&M has had a longer winning streak. And then the Soul Bowl. Interesting. Alcorn.
Wow. Over Jackson?
Yeah.
Woo. Well, that was early 2003 to 2006.
Yeah. And then State Fair Classic. But now overall, okay, Grambling has the longest winning streak, but previous it's kind of made up some ground there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Did we do the Labor Day Classic? PV over Texas Southern.
Well,
that's a long one there, Carlos.
Wait a minute. Which Labor Day Classic?
Yeah, Texas Southern.
Oh, did I skip that one? I'm sorry.
Yeah. No. What I'm saying, look at that long winning streak.
Mm-hmm. It is a longest winning streak. You're absolutely right. Now we go to another graphic. Boy, I know they're probably going at it, right? Head-to-head wins in D1 HBCU rivalries, again, courtesy of No Chill Sports, since 2000, head-to-head. And the graphic speaks for itself. Now, that they came up with this information, A&T, 12, it looks like 12-11 over North Carolina Central. But see how even that is? That's what a rivalry is. You know, you have on both sides. What Coach Pettaway?
No, I'm looking at your next graphic, man. Good gracious.
Boy, Hampton has they're up there over Hampton, and then of course you see the Battle of the Bay. Hampton again over Norfolk State, Bayou Classic, Southern over Grambling State. Oh, but look at the next one. Since 2000. Oh, Jackson State, a slight edge over Southern University. And then you throw in that 6 straight, huh? And then Florida Classic, of course, Bethune-Cookman and FAMU. Bethune has the edge there. Prairie View A&M, a big edge over Texas Southern. Magic City Classic, Alabama A&M, an edge over Alcorn State. Now JSU, now you see they've made some progress, right? From the last graph to this graph.
Yep.
over head-to-head over Southern and over Alcorn State. And then the State Fair Classic, Grambling State over Prairie View A&M. So you see the graphics, but there's also some internal numbers inside the graphics, trends. But I just thought that was interesting. Coach Petterway, you seem kind of surprised about some of the head-to-head. Tell us about that. Why?
Head-to-head, man, this is amazing. I like this. I like this. But yeah, and now the big difference is in the Florida Classic, FAMU has picked up some ground on Bethune-Cookman, because in that other graphic, that winning streak was way out there, but it seems as if Florida A&M is headed in the right direction. They're trending upward.
Mm-hmm. Boy, look, I'm surprised Dr. Cavill hasn't analyzed some of this. He's a numbers guy, but I just thought it was fun, and that's what rivalries is. They are. You win some, you lose some. Specifically, you look at Southern and Jackson State. Winning streak, Jackson State 6. Southern has had an 8-game winning streak. So it's almost a balance there, right? And then we see head-to-head. Jackson State, since 2000, has a slight edge. So I just thought that was fun. Thank you, Roy.
Now, they omitted who was Valley? Oh, Valley and Pine Bluff. That's their rival, right?
Yeah, well, Coach Petterway, I don't want somebody to say he made a nasty comment.
Okay,
but Valley, it's tough, but with Valley, but maybe we can pull those numbers up though.
Well, Valley's rivals obviously Alcorn and Jackson, but I guess geographically, people put Valley and Pine Bluff kind of in the same category, but I don't see it as a rivalry myself, to be honest. But I think if you look at the in-state rivals with Valley, it would be Jackson and it would be Alcorn. For Alcorn, it would be Jackson and it would be Valley, and then it will be Southern University. Of course, Southern's the closest geographically to Alcorn, in terms of, other than Jackson. Alcorn's the closest geographically to Southern University.
That is true.
So I think that, that's what makes it, you can make that as a rivalry as well. So is it about geographics?
Yep, that's what I was going to say.
That's what makes the broad definition of a rivalry, because geographic, you can call it a rivalry, or whether it's in state or, even Southern and Prairie View. Carlos, we talk about Southern and Prairie View in football. Has that become a rivalry? No, because I just know when Southern and Prairie View play, maybe it's been some exciting games to where the hype and build up for it, but I didn't think so, but.
No, just in my opinion. Now, most people will disagree with me. They would say Grambling is the number one rival. I say from a passion standpoint, to me, it's Jackson State. Now, you say Alcorn, yep, closest geographically. It's closer to Southern than Grambling State is, but they're in the same state. So Grambling probably, if you took a poll, I don't know, if you take a poll, I say Jackson State and Southern's rivalry, number one is Jackson State from an emotional standpoint. But Coach Petterway is looking at me like, how could that be? But most people will disagree with me, Coach Petterway. They will say it's Grambling.
And I would too, because I look at it this way. Look at the number of people that attend a Bayou Classic. All right, to me, there's more interest in that than Southern and Jackson State.
Well, Jackson State always somebody, I don't know who is it, Stevie Wonder and them counting the crowds now? In Jackson State. Help me out, Jackson State. People in the chat room, it'd be packed. In the best of times and best years. But they always underreported to me. But I guess, the Bayou Classic probably an average of 65 to 70.
Right.
Over the years. Some of the older folk, older than me, they're going to say Grambling. But I guess I was just blown away. The first time I went to a game in Jackson, 1993, it was packed. Coach Pettaway, it was people I hadn't seen in Baton Rouge in 10 years, but I saw him in Jackson.
Yeah.
There was a famous pastor. I don't want to talk too much in Baton Rouge, but he was enjoying himself. And I pulled up to close to the stadium, about 2 miles away. The traffic just stopped.
Yeah.
And then you saw a whole lot of smoke. I'm like, something happened? They was like, no, that's the barbecue pits going.
Yep.
And when we finally made it an hour later on the grounds, it looked like a beehive.
Yeah.
A super beehive. But the Bayou Classic, it's something up there, sports with
Morgan State.
Oh, okay. I guess that's Roy putting it up. Has to be Roy. But the Bayou Classic,
46. Wow.
Yeah, it's in. How many times have these bitter FCS rivals hit each other? HBCU rivalries. Hampton versus Howard. North
Wow,
Carolina.
56-41 all time. Hampton lead. So then Hampton, wow, so they got them and Howard and them. Okay, I see what's going on now.
Well, I'm gonna tell you, my own experience with the Hampton fans was in the Circle City Classic years ago, and in Indianapolis, of course, it was a nice crowd there, and they have a good history. And then I've seen, take it back. Then I saw Southern play Hampton at A.W. Mumford Stadium, and both teams were highly ranked.
We only got a 3-game lead over Bama State, Carlos.
Huh?
We only have a 3-game lead over Bama State.
Well, so you're disputing the graphic, huh?
No, I'm not. I'm saying.
Okay.
I thought it was larger. We only have a 3-game lead over them.
But again, that's what rivalries are. It's close competition.
Correct.
It shouldn't be this big.
Okay,
gap.
but now he went too fast. But I was looking at Jackson State. Hey, Roy, go back. Alcorn and Jackson. I'm sorry, right there.
Yeah.
All right, 48-38. Is that still rival, Carlos?
Yes.
That's close enough?
Yeah, that just means they played a lot of games.
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yep. You good? Go ahead, Roy. I'm sorry. But yeah, now I like this better, Carlos, the actual numbers.
Mm-hmm.
So if two teams are playing each other yearly and it's close, does that define it as a rivalry? For example, Valley Jackson State in football. We kind of know what that looks like. Yeah, can we consider that as a rivalry?
And no. But now if we go back, see, that's what I'm saying. There's the numbers, then there's inside the numbers.
Right.
Now, the time, the graph we showed was 2000. This graph was probably all time. All time. Now, if we go back into the 80s, Valley was strong, i.e. Willie Totten and Jerry Rice.
Right.
But I think it still was competitive. Now, I'm not an expert on that rivalry, but
So does the rivalry get diminished when one team dominates another team?
I think so, Carlos. Because see, we had that here. Charles, across town, UAH, Alabama A&M, in the same city. I've only lost to them 2 times and beat them 25. They still call it a rivalry. It's not a rivalry because they can't stay on the floor. I don't consider that a rival. It's a game of interest. But to me, you have to be competitive.
Say that part again. Who was it against?
Okay, Alabama Huntsville. We're in the same city here in Huntsville, right?
Oh, okay.
So we used to have what was called a Mayor's Cup, and we would always play. So I want to say maybe if I might be up 25-2 or something like that. That's not a rivalry.
Nope. How about my definition? What did I say? It has to be kind of a
competitive. Yes.
Right. Now, within that rivalry, I go back to Jackson State and Southern. Now, and in this graph, and we're talking about specifically football. Let's remember that.
Mhm.
It's not the other sports, but you probably could do it in basketball. Who is your rivalry? Some people will say, well, it's probably the same school, Southern and Grambling State, because of the past history, recent history, right? But I digress. Let me go back to answer your question, though, Coach. Yeah, you had the ups on them.
Right.
No, that's what you say, a game of interest. It's not a it's not a robbery to me. But now
Right.
people may
So
disagree
back in
with
the
that.
day when Valley had Jerry Rice and Satellite Totten, and they were doing what they were doing, and Jackson was doing what they were doing, it was a rivalry back during that time.
Mhm.
But now, because Jackson has had the ups on Valley of late, and if you just go way back, that's no longer defined as a rivalry.
Yeah,
Correct.
because if
I
you break
don't-
it down in decades, say the last 10 years, JSU
It's dominated.
people in the chat room, has it been one-sided?
Probably.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the last time Valley beat Jackson.
Well, we do know Valley beat FAMU, but now is
Yeah,
that a
yeah.
rivalry?
Yeah.
No.
No.
I guess the point I'm making is so we can take the rivalry tag on, we can put it on something, and then just as quickly as we put it on, we can take it off if one team is dominant over another
Correct.
over a period of time.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's what I say. I believe that. Yes.
Yeah, I'm kind of going peeking in the chat room. Kenneth said, I remember that 1993 JSU and Southern football game. That was spectacular. If I remember, the score was 13-3 Southern. And Coach Sean Wallace, who recently passed, he had a tremendous game. And that was the first one that I attended in Jackson. Let me put it that way. But now, if you take that, and it's still a rivalry, then it comes back to A.W. Mumford Stadium. I want to say the largest crowd in the history of A.W. Mumford Stadium. When Jackson State came one time for homecoming, and it was the big controversy that Jackson State, and it was homecoming, I believe. Jackson State got to the campus late. Charles, you remember last year coming, right?
Mhm.
And somebody, and Coach Fedway, somebody said somebody cut the brakes on the Jackson State football bus. Now, that's a tall tale. Come on. But see, those things happen in rivalries as well.
Yeah.
It's the emotion, the passion. Then if you throw in the bands, it's passionate, man.
Yeah, but just getting on campus late, that ain't no big thing, because if depending on who Southern's playing, you're not gonna get on campus. Because I done got caught in that. When I came to one of the football games. I flew in to New Orleans and drove over to Baton Rouge, right? Do you know I got caught and couldn't get on campus because you couldn't get across the bridge?
And Coach. And I think at several places you probably have the same the same problem.
Right.
Coach,
and it was Southern and A&M. It was Southern and A&M. But I do believe, though, I think that year when Cooper was there, you all may have had us in there for homecoming. So I think it was a homecoming game. And man, you couldn't get on that campus.
Yeah. Florida Classic all-time series record between FAMU and Bethune-Cookman all-time. It's 54-24. See, the difference is
that a rivalry, though? 54-24.
Wow.
Is that a rivalry?
Yes, it is. Hold up now. That's messing us up now, because that's still a rivalry.
Charles is trying to trip us up here.
No. I'm just saying. I mean, if a rivalry is lopsided like that, is it still considered I say yes.
But how many games they done played?
Okay, 54.
How many games is that overall total?
That's
79.
Wow.
That's 79 games. 78.
They played a long time. You would probably like to be some balance, but it's not. But I say this is a rivalry.
Yeah, I do.
Despite the imbalance.
It's a rivalry. Yeah. In state, the only two FCS HBCUs in Florida, right?
This is a
FCS.
rivalry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Roy say this is a rivalry.
Okay. So Valley Jackson State. That's not a rivalry.
It's a rivalry, but it's
Wow.
It's not a strong rivalry.
Well, it's the same thing with it's the same thing with Bethune and Fam 50. That's a 30 game. That's a 30 game advantage.
Yep. Wow.
So Valley Jackson is not a rivalry.
It's a rivalry, but it's lopsided.
FAMU and Bethune is lopsided.
Yeah.
It just seems like, I mean, and Carlos, you schooled me on this. Southern and Grambling. I just thought clear cut that Grambling was Southern's #1 rival, and you said no, sir. It's Jackson State.
To me,
yeah. And and maybe I'm just biased by the fact that there are two schools in state. Maybe I'm caught up into that, and the Bayou Classic caught up into that. But Jackson and Southern's had some really great games over the landscape, and maybe that has become the rivalry for Southern as compared to, Grambling. But to me, to Charles Epton, I think there's nothing like the Bayou Classic, and to me, that is the #1 rival, no doubt in my mind. I'll put Jackson a close second, but the Bayou Classic's the Bayou Classic, and I'll put that over Jackson any day.
Right.
I like some of the comments.
I was just about to ask you a question about proximity. How far is Jackson? I'm sorry, Grambling and Southern.
Ooh, it's about, I'm gonna say 3.5 to 4 hours.
3.5 to 4. How far is Southern to Jackson?
With me driving, I've done it in 2 hours, but I would say technically 2 hours and
so proximity
30,
is close.
2.5 hours. 2.5 hours.
No, Roy, Bethune Cookman and FAMU, how far apart?
That is about 5 hours, if I'm not mistaken. 4. Wow. Well, it is still 4. We'll see. So and that's why I wanted to jump on, because I actually wanted to get into this conversation about the rivalry. When you talk about rivalries, I mean, you're looking at a situation. It is history. It's about history, and somebody actually said it's an event being a classic, but making it a rivalry. So Bethune and Coach, you're right. We're the only 2 FCS programs in the state, HBCUs. So that's where it already started, the rivalry. But that game itself has become more. It is an event, but it definitely is a rival. Bethune is they will always be our rival, and probably considered by most people, because this is when I look at a definition when you talk about a true rivalry. If your average fan knows about the game, then it's a true rivalry. Because like Carlos says, there's a difference. You got to look at it as levels to this thing. Because when we were in the MEAC before, our real rival would have been A&T, because it was the only one that we were back and forth with. We've been in the SWAC for what, 4 years now, going on 5 years. Jackson State has elevated to that rivalry because of the fact of what we do and how we compete against each other. Alabama State will probably become that if they get wins, because even their coach said it. It ain't a rivalry until we win one.
Yep.
And so rivals go back and forth, and that's the kind of thing I think you look at with rivalries. That's the other element that makes it a rivalry, because like I said, Bethune is just our little brother. I mean, that's just little cousin. I don't even know who to call.
Watch it.
They don't like that. They don't want to be the little brother.
They'll be all right. Then it is what it is. And
watch it, bro.
but that's what that is. And hey, listen, I'm pretty sure, no offense, Carlos, I'm pretty sure some Jackson State people will probably say that about y'all. Coach, I'm sure some A&M people will say that. Hey,
they better not tell me that in my face. Yeah, they probably feel the way. It's just different levels.
Yeah.
To the rivalries, what you're saying, and there's no wrong or right answer.
Yeah. Well, I can share this about Alcorn and Jackson State, and I didn't really realize the depth and the intensity of the rivalry until we started winning when Jay Hobson was the coach and all of that. One year we won the division. We're going to the SWAC championship game. We lost to Jackson State at home. and our fans were just livid. And I'm like, well, look, we're playing for a championship. Next week, we're going to Houston. We're playing for a championship. And some of our fans said, man, we lost to Jackson State. I don't care if we win the SWAC. That's a half a championship as far as I'm concerned. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, sir. Yes.
Ooh,
yeah. And so
unbelievable.
When it comes to those, I mean, Alcorn-Jackson may be a rivalry unto itself because it's so passionate. Jackson State fans don't want to lose to Alcorn and vice versa. But it takes, that's probably a whole nother level of a rivalry within the state of Mississippi between Alcornites and Jacksonians. Maybe not at the depth of the Bayou Classic, but maybe at the same depth of Southern and Jackson, because, you, Carlos, your feelings about it, and, Jacksonians fans about Southern University, how they feel about Southern University. But there are levels to this, though. Yeah. There are levels to it. There's no doubt. And I agree. There is no right or wrong answer. Maybe I was a little too strong on the rivalry thing, but I'm just looking at the in-state location and the intensity of some of these rivalries. They're friendly rivalries and they're heated rivalries too, and we've talked about that on this show too.
And you see Troy in his comments, he says it's a big rivalry with Grambling State. I think that if I hadn't said it, but that explains it perfectly.
Right.
Jackson State is intense. It could be marbles, tiddlywinks, checkers, or you should throw the arrows,
the darts,
the darts.
Yeah.
If it's a time to get together, Southern Jackson State, and then they're just alike to me. They're similar. Put any kind of athletic thing on, it's gonna be on. They also say it's definitely at the depth of the Bayou Classic, just not with the Superdome and New Orleans as a backdrop. And then that's another thing within it's tailgating, but it's at a minimal with the Bayou Classic. When you go to Jackson, you got a lot of open area where you can tailgate. And then to be honest with you, Charles, Grambling is more like it is family. It's like you're playing your cousins at Thanksgiving. You go see them in another town, and then after the fixings are served, then you get out in that backyard and you have at it. You don't want to lose to your cousins.
Right.
Carlos, I think you just said something that I think actually kind of sets it apart when we talk about true rivals. True rivals transcends every sport. Yep. It's not just because right now if you think about it, all we really talk about is football.
Correct.
When you talk about the rivalry, that transcends every sport. Like when you see, and that I think so. That's one of the areas that makes the difference with us and Bethune, because like that graphic, we were looking at the Florida Classic. Well, if you look at a baseball graphic for that, probably over the past 30, 40 years, it'd be different for FAMU. You know what I'm saying? So, and talk about basketball. So I think that's the caveat we can put into this. That when you're talking about rivalries, it transcends all sports.
Right.
I'll tell you what, Coach Petaway, I could be in 30 years from now in the old folks' home, and they happen to have somebody with Jackson State in there with me.
You're gonna kick that cane off, mother.
Let's go, buddy. And we both huffing and puffing. That's how I feel. It's more intense. Go ahead, Charles. Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask Coach Petaway. I mean, what is the Alabama State A&M? Is that a friendly rivalry at Legion Field? Is it intense? I mean, I've never been to one, but
it's intense. And when you talk about tailgate, there's not a bigger tailgate, man. We start on Tuesday. They let you in there Monday. You start on Tuesday all the way to Sunday with the tailgates, man. They charge for you to come in there to even park in there on a Friday night. To come in and you can't even get around that place, man. There's so many people there. And then it's just like what Roy just said. In all sports, when you compete against Alabama State, our fans, we going at it. We going after it. It's after it. Now, for another school, Carlos, it takes something to happen. Like I'll give you an example. One year when we played Arkansas Pine Bluff down there in basketball, there was an incident during the game between one of my players and one of the guys from Arkansas Pine Bluff. Well, they rocked our bus when it was time for us to leave. We won the game, of course. They rocked our bus when it was time for us to leave. Well, it got so bad that when Arkansas Pine Bluff came to us, our kids did the same thing. They knocked their windows out of their bus, right? So we had to postpone that. That's before we got in the SWAC. We had to postpone those games until emotions calmed down. We had to wait a couple of years until some of those players had moved on. So that made us that made it a game of interest. Our fans wanted to come out because they wanted to get Arkansas Pine Bluff. So you got all that kind of stuff going back and forth, but there's nothing bigger than Alabama A&M and Alabama State. And let me tell you how crazy it is. Now I'm a member of the 100 Black Men. We having our golf tournament today, right? They messed around and bought some black shirts with gold trim. I said, I done lost your mind. I'm not wearing that. What do you mean, coach? I said, man, that's Bama State colors. I said, I will break out in a rash if I wore that. So that's a rival, man. That's a rival, Carlos.
That's
true. But no, I'm serious. But Roy is absolutely correct. It depends.
I can't wear no garter and gold. It ain't happening. I refuse.
There you go. I'm telling you. I told him, I said, nah, man, I can't do that, man. Y'all can have that. I'll continue to wear my white shirt. I said, I'm not doing that. I can't do that. Yeah.
And you know, it's interesting. Like we had mentioned Texas Southern and Prairie View. Now, if you're not an alum of either school, like if I would go to Dr. Cavill, one of those basketball, football games, which side would I pick? You know what I'm saying? Who would I root for?
Yeah.
I think about that all the time. I've never been on the Prairie View campus. I guess that's a benchmark.
Yeah, man.
But I think I don't know. I think I would kind of lean toward Prairie View because Texas Southern.
It's in the city.
Now
it's in the city, and they're more landlocked,
right? But what I'm trying to say is, I probably would pull for Prairie View because now we've been talking about football, but now for a good while in basketball, oh boy, who always hollers about why we always got to play the Texas teams first?
Yeah. Oh yeah,
I have. So when you have that situation where you hope both teams lose, tie or players get ejected. Yeah. But I guess what I'm saying is Texas Southern has been a thorn in Southern side in basketball. Right. Now, is that a rivalry or is it still Jackson State? Now, in basketball, it's intense too, but is it as intense as football? Then we break it down by sport. In baseball, I think it's intense. They've had some big games, but Texas Southern and Southern basketball rival, heated, intense, or all of the above. That's interesting. Just a thought.
Well, Carlos, let me ask you this question. All right, so the Bayou Classic, as compared to Southern losing to Grambling in basketball in the SWAC tournament, which game got more oxygen?
Out of the Bayou Classic or basketball? Is that what you're asking?
I mean, between basketball and football, Southern won the football game, but Grambling won the SWAC tournament game. Which game got more attention? Like, I know how you felt about it. You're disappointed Southern won the regular season in basketball, but lost to Grambling, and like, good season, we move on. But would you feel the same way about football, considering, well, I think I've answered the question because maybe the rivalry, but is it the same thing?
I think the pain or disappointment, whichever you want to say, it was probably it probably would be more with football, because as you see in the regular season time, and then by the way, didn't we have a coach Coach Johnson on last week, and he made the point to Coach Pettaway, regular season title. That's nothing nothing to be disappointed about. Yeah, that's still tough, But anyway,
yeah.
To answer your question, I think the football, because now at one point Coach Jackson had Southern's number, right? But see, that's what I'm saying. A rivalry goes back and forth. Now, this past season, Southern defeated them twice, right? In the regular season, lost in the tournament. And then Coach Woods last year, I think Grambling swept. Coach Johnson first year. Grambling may have swept Southern. Yeah, they did, because Southern had the lead in both of those games. So, again, it goes back and forth. It's a lot of layers. What we're seeing, it's a lot of layers to what you consider a rivalry.
Yeah. And one thing I'm learning, Carlos, and I learned this a couple of years ago when FAMU won the baseball tournament. FAMU and Alabama State rivalry, I didn't realize the depth of that rivalry until the last couple of years. And I think we talked about it in football and even in basketball and even in baseball. I mean, that rivalry kind of snuck up on me. You wouldn't think from a distance, you wouldn't think that they would be rivals, but and I think Roy talked about it, Alabama State and FAMU have become really good rivals, growing on me. And I didn't realize that.
So the same question, then we're going to break in. If Coach Pettaway, if you had to go to another rivalry game, who would you pull for? Name that
Well,
that
I will pull for anybody that helps us. Okay, if our rival, okay, let's say our rival is playing Alcorn, and if they beat Alcorn, that improves A&M. Well, I'm going for Bama State. I want Bama State to win that game. Only time I don't want Bama State to win is when they play Alabama A&M.
All right. Well, let me be specific. Since I should probably ask it this way. You're at Jackson State and Alcorn. Besides what you just said, let's say it's football. Are you going to be neutral, or who are you going to pull for?
I would be neutral because I like both. I like both schools. I would be neutral.
See, you're a little different. I like to start a mess. I like to throw a rock and hide my hand. If I had to go to a FAMU Bethune-Cookman game in Orlando, the Classic, who do you
That's
think?
That's on the neutral site. Neutral site.
Bethune-Cookman.
Who you think? That's right. And I'll be ducking to get out of there. EA would finally meet me and say, "What? Get out of here." EA said, like most rivals, they want championship.
EA want you to lose the spring game. That's a rival there.
So, and Roy brought it up. It seems like FAMU and Jackson State, specifically in football, is it heating up?
Yes.
Because I know the fans on social media, I see them. They already talking.
Yeah. And I think, to me, it goes back several years. I mean, that Hail Mary, I think the FAMU Jackson went on a Hail Mary a few years ago. This was before Prime. And then, of course, when Coach Sanders got there, it kind of built up. And so I think the rivalry is red hot. TC Taylor coming in there, winning the whole thing last year. I think that's a pretty intense rivalry now.
Yeah. Now I'm gonna say this, and then we're definitely going to break. I had some hot shots to say since they've won 6 in a row. I don't know if that's a rivalry. Get out of here. Get out of here, Jackson State, because I'm gonna throw up the 8 in a row. How about that?
Yeah.
Must have been some youngsters. I don't know, but we've been talking about rivalries. It's been an interesting dialogue. It's fun. They need to move JSU to the west. Well, no, I don't know about that. Well, they moved to Alcorn. Remember that conversation? Who was going to get moved to the west? Some people thought a lot of people thought it was Valley.
Yeah.
But I got that one right. Geographically, the closest, Lorman, Mississippi.
Yeah.
I knew it. But I would have been okay with Jackson. Don't matter.
Yeah.
Again, we could play horse.
Yeah.
Remember that game?
Yeah.
The in-base have horse. It don't matter. Whatever it is, we're gonna be competitive. And that's why, doggone it, I don't want that streak to get to 8.
Yeah. Well, I think Stock Talk Davis got a good point. I mean, leftover hate, I think that exists in some of these rivalries.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Southern, look, there's leftover hate we hosted the first 2 SWAC championship games on campus, Alcorn Southern. I think the hate's been there from the McNair days and just going all the way back. I mean, we've kind of been in Southern's way. And so I think the term leftover hate, I think that is appropriate in a lot of these rivalries. There's a lot of leftover hate in some of this stuff, in my opinion.
You had to open up a old wound there, huh, Charles? I got out of there, man. You talking about disappointed. Me and my best friend, Charles looked for us, we was gone. Man.
We had an operations meeting today. Tuesday, Carlos, talking about the home games. I'm gonna talk with our chief of security when you come on campus in November. We got a plan for you to get you on and off. We gonna get Carlos Brown's butt out of there. That's exactly what somebody said the other day. So we'll talk about it as we go along.
And somehow I think that's gonna be a tough one up there. On that note, we'll take a time out. We appreciate everybody with the dialogue. There's no wrong or right. It's just offering opinions. But now, when we come back from this timeout, Game 7.
Yeah.
Indiana and OKC. And I'm going to bring up some of the national prognosticators, how they feel about this. I'm going to use the word sensationalism. Journalists. One team drops a game. Oh, they're no good. They this and that. We'll get our predictions. And then also, where's Durant going to go? Charles, if you text me any more about Durant to Miami, I've got strong opinions about that. Strong opinions. No, Roy, I don't either. Nope.
Yeah, he's not the answer in Miami now. He's not
KD in South Beach.
No. But we'll come back and talk about that. You're watching the Carlos Brown Show right here on the Black College Sports Network. We shall return.
Football fans, HBCU football is back in the ATL with the Cricket MEAC SWAC Challenge Kickoff. Representing the MEAC, North Carolina Central, and representing the SWAC, Southern, Eagles, Jaguars, the Marching Sound Machine, the Human Jukebox. The kickoff trophy is up for grabs, and bragging rights are on the line. The rivalry is real. Bring the family and join us pre-game for the fun-filled Coca-Cola fan experience, including band jamborees, food, activations, and fellowship. For tickets and information, visit MEACSWACTalents.com.
It's like a loop machine. All around town, people trying to get down. It's like a loop machine.
The Cuvée Group is a Florida-based marketing and training consulting firm. We help businesses communicate to their target audience and engage them in conversation. We also help to expand their audiences, which will ultimately result in growth for those organizations. In addition to being a certified constant contact specialist, my colleagues and I are also certified in John Maxwell Leadership Principles. We use these proven principles to conduct workshops, training, and private coaching sessions for individuals and companies looking to take things to the next level. Contact us to schedule a free consultation. Issues today, don't delay, call Cuvée.
Okay, Pat, I'll call you back. No, you're going to get mad. Watch this segment.
Yeah.
I'm texting Speedy Bus right now.
Yep. But you know what? You can't call Jeannie no more now. She's a
general manager.
I'm texting Jeannie right now. I'm waiting for her to text me back.
and speaking, welcome back to this week's edition of the Carlos Brown Show. Here in the sonic boom of the South, if you just want to again narrow it down to bands and rivalries, the human jukebox and the sonic boom of the South. Let's see, Carlos, please make a prediction on Game 7. I will. As the gift of death needs reinforcement. Okay.
Come on, Carlos. They trying to say you like Charles Barkley. Every time he make a prediction, is bad for that team that he predicts.
Well, that's what EA thinks. But yeah, the NBA Finals, Game 7 Sunday night. I'll be watching, and I was listening to the national prognosticators. Okay, and it's just amazing when the Thunder went up a game. Oh, it's all over. A dynasty. This is the beginning of a dynasty. Then they got blew out the other night. Now it's like Indiana. I think they can get it done. You know, who has the momentum going in? You know, I remember the Lakers and the Celtics on Memorial Day, back in the day. Somebody in the chat room says I live in the past. That's true. Past is important. The Lakers got blew out by 30-something points. They forgot about that game, and they ended up winning the series.
Right.
OKC had a bad game. Officiating was interesting, but we never blame the officiating, right, Coach Pettaway? So with that being said, I'm going to do a prediction. I think OKC wins it by double digits. I really think they're going to bounce back. SGA, Williams. But
Caruso got to play well, Carlos, for them to win.
Yeah. Well, that's when my next point was going to be.
Go ahead.
The teams that won, you can always kind of look. The bench has whichever best bench has done the best. And I think at home, I think OKC is going to get it done. I said 4-2, so I'm a little bit off, EA. OKC gets it done tomorrow night. Coach Pettaway, your thoughts?
Oh, well, I agree. I think OKC is going to win the game because they are playing at home. And, you know, for the people that think, you know, the playoffs and stuff are rigged, they're saying, well, because of the small markets, they're going to go to 7 games anyway. No, I just think that OKC did not come out with the fire that they needed to at Indiana. Indiana did what they had to do to win that game. They were at home. So most of the time when you're at home, your bench and the others, they play well. They play better. And I think that's what happened in that game. But I think defensively, you'll see a different team for OKC tomorrow. And I think offensively, they'll be more up-tempo. I think they're going to get after it. They'll be more up-tempo. I predict them to win the game. Now, I'm not saying by no double digits, but I think they'll win the game because they're at home.
Well, you know, I'm bold. And Charles, this Indiana team is pretty good. Look at over the last 2 years. You've seen them make a progressive step each time. And it's not to throw in the shade that Indiana is not good. They are good. But I just think OKC will get it done. Now, all of this about the beginning of a dynasty, 1 year to the next, anything could change. Right. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's a bit premature to talk about the beginning of a dynasty. But it should be a good one tomorrow night.
I think the word dynasty in today's NBA is going to be very hard to come by with these aprons. It's going to be hard to keep these players together. You're going to have this is going to be the 7th different champion in the last 7 years. You know, the days of Magic, Bird, and all that. I think that's going to be put on the sideline. You know, Halliburton, we didn't know the status of Halliburton going into Game 6, and you saw what he did. And I think OKC had a chance to close it out, and they didn't. Now they are at home. They've been pretty good at home, but Indiana's won at OKC. So I think it's a pick'em game to me. I always go with the home team. There's a reason why you get a home game in Game 7. You work your tail off home court. I think those fans are going to be rabid. I think by getting blown out, I think that was the worst thing that could have happened to Indiana for Game 7. If that game was close, you can make a case that Indiana's going to get it. But because they blew them out, and you know OKC is going to come out with a level of intensity and ferocity early on, if the Pacers stay in this game at halftime, I think they'll have a shot. But I think OKC is going to come out with a level of ferocity and intensity that I don't know if Indiana's going to match. They're at home. I'm going with OKC in Game 7.
And I don't know why OKC kind of, Coach Pettaway, went away from, looked like they went smaller.
Yeah.
And I don't know about that. Not to criticize coaches.
Right. Yeah, I think they're better. I think they're better when they play big. I think they're better when they play big. They can control the glass. When you can control the glass, you get an opportunity to get. You have more transition opportunities when you're playing defense, and you can rebound the basketball. So I just think it's going to be, number one, it's going to be a tremendous atmosphere in that place, and I think that energy from the home crowd, that's gonna elevate OKC. I honestly think that you got people like Caruso, they're coming off the bench, man. They're gonna be ready to play, man, and they're at home. They're at home.
And Coach Pettaway, now that I think about it, I expected Indiana their backs were to the wall, and they came out. Now, do I think it's going to be a blowout? No.
Right.
But I, hey, again, like we were talking about with rivalries, you lose, your back's to the wall, you come out and fight. And so now I was listening to a lot of the shows on the national feed. It seems like now, because OKC was predicted heavily to win it, right? So they still can win it, but now you kind of see those prognosticators kind of look like they going toward Indiana's side, because OKC got blown out. I think sometimes we put too much into blowouts or loss at one game, and then when you win. So I guess it's their job to kind of go back and forth. But
I think the prognosticator said that is because we didn't know the status of their best player, of Halliburton coming in. They didn't. I think a lot of people didn't feel like he would do what he did in Game 6.
He looked fine to me.
Yeah.
But going into the game, there was some talk of whether he should even play or not, and he said he was going to play. He said there's no doubt, but just what he was able to do, not being 100%, and so I think that's why some people are saying, well, OKC had a chance to close it out and they didn't. Now you've given the Pacers new lease on life for Game 7. So I think that's probably what we as the media were talking about. And then, when a team loses, when, your best player struggles, when Halliburton struggles with a 4-point game, like what's wrong with him? Or when Alexander struggles, what's wrong with him? I that's the part that gets me. Like, superstars can't have bad games. And I think that the answer to that question from a media perspective is no. You're making the big bucks. You got to show up when the lights are the brightest. But sometimes teams just have your number, and sometimes you just don't have it. Just shots aren't falling. And I just, I kind of take a back seat to that. But hey, for Game 7, whoever if Halliburton doesn't have his game, they're going to lose. And if they can find a way to slow down OKC a little bit at home, I think Indiana's going to win. So I think it's going to be a pick'em game. And the ratings, I think, Carlos, for all the low ratings numbers that's been talked about throughout this series, this will be the highest rating number, I think, of the whole series because it's Game 7.
Right. I think it might be a little okey doke there. I'm old school, Coach Pettaway. I don't think he was as hurt as they let on. Oh, but wait a minute, no. The media. The media said he was hurt. He might not make it. He couldn't be. And Coach Carlos didn't really say too much. Just a normal thing. Just something no conspiracy, something just to ponder. Just a
gamesmanship.
Right, right. Now, let me ask you this. Also this week, there was the big talk about whether or not Halliburton is considered a superstar. Charles, how do you see him, man? I'll do mine first. I don't see him as a superstar. I think he's I think he's a good player. But to me, he has not reached superstardom yet.
I think one moment put it in that category when he hit that big shot. When he hit two big shots against New York, everybody's saying the superstar has emerged.
No. Sensationalism.
I'm like, let's pump the brakes a little bit on that. Now, if he hits the game winner tomorrow night,
he's still not a superstar. He just in the groove. That's all that is.
Well, I mean, but we say that, but then that's going to be the narrative. If that happens, if he hits one at the horn to win the Pacers the championship, people are going to say he's that. I will say no, not there yet, not there yet. But he's ascending. There's no question about it. Just keep on keeping on. I think he will be put in that superstar category. I think we as the media, we did that. We're guilty of that. And now we got to eat that because clearly he's not there yet. And I think he's taking on the role like, I'm not all that. And so I think that's just the way the media works. It just works that way. And it's a back and forth thing, just like the rivalries. One day yes, one day no. That's kind of what that superstar stuff is.
Well, see, I look at the body of work, and I'm looking at Brian Fulford's comment. OKC had a chance to close and didn't. MJ and Kobe would have closed. SGA is not a closer. Really, Brian? Come on. Come on now. It's what Indiana did. The others. It's a team, T, not an I. Yeah. So let's kind of be objective about that. And shame on you to say SGA is whatever you said about SGA, and OKC didn't close. There's been other instances where teams haven't closed. Now, Michael J, MJ, and Kobe didn't close all the time. Michael Jordan was a complete assassin.
Yep.
Do we have to go back in history again? The flu, the flu came out and they didn't think he was going to play. So they've always had heroic efforts. Halliburton's not as heroic as, Michael Jordan with the flu and stuff, but there are other cases. But
let's put it in another category. If SGA goes for 50 and 15 and he hits the game winner to win the championship at home, is he considered a superstar?
He's already a superstar, not just for that one instance, Charles. He's the most valuable player because he's been consistent throughout the year. Don't give me that flash about, look, hell, Kareem could have thrown a hook shot and made it. Was he a superstar because of that? No. His body of work.
Right.
And then on I was watching the national show yesterday. Team, what makes a superstar? They were talking about rings versus how many rings. When LeBron came out and said, and I actually agree with LeBron. Let's look at the great players who didn't get a ring. If that's your definition of a star, how many rings you have, Barkley didn't get it. Yeah, you are petty, Brian. I'm petty and far from objective when it comes to my team. I'm glad you admitted that. I'm glad you admitted that now. Peace to you, Brian. At least you're honest about that.
Yeah. But Carlos, to your point, that you talking about Charles Barkley, Alvin Iverson, Stockton and Malone. These are all great players, but they never won a championship. I don't think a championship should define your greatness. I mean, if you're a great player, you can be great without winning the championship.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you can be great without winning the championship.
And so Dan Marino was a great football player, but he never won the Super Bowl.
Yep.
I mean, we can go on and on with players who were terrific and just didn't win the championship. Should that define them? I think in today's world, unfortunately, I think that's what's being talked about. If you ain't flashed the jewelry, or the ring, then it doesn't matter. I disagree with that. I think your stats are your stats. You're still terrific. You're still in the Hall of Fame. But I think we're in a category in today's society in which you're defined by championships.
Right.
And guess what?
You got to be careful with that too, because you take somebody like Robert Horry. Look how many rings Robert Horry got.
And he's not considered. Excellent point.
Every team that he's ever been on.
I agree.
But he look at how many rings he's got.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's got a bunch of them.
Yeah.
And now, if we narrow it down specifically, right? Elgin Baylor never won one.
Yep.
If we look at it, even if you consider what is a superstar or superstarness, I go back to Oscar Robertson, averaged a triple-double.
Yep.
Now, but I think people consider him a superstar. Am I wrong about that?
Yeah, he is.
Right. What is the old left-hander from the Celtics? You know, I don't like the Celtics.
To my left hand, Archibald, or guard or forward?
The center, Bill Russell, probably have more rings than anybody.
Yeah.
But if that's your definition, and I think now, I hope I don't get in trouble for saying this, the social media perspective, the flash and dash, they look at that. But the true purists,
you're right.
You get that, Coach? By the way, the purists,
they
know better. Flash and dash, and that's what culture in our society has come to. And so it was interesting. They were talking about that. And it was Gilbert Arenas. Who else was on there? The guy from Duke. What a bad mistake he made riding on a motorcycle and tore his leg up.
Jay Williams.
Yeah. And of course, Stephen A. is never wrong. But they were debating. But it was a good debate. And Tracy McGrady made some excellent points. He said he caught a lot of flack.
Yep.
Yeah, because he didn't.
For not winning the big one. Yep.
And the point they were bringing up, they were criticized. Go ahead, Coach.
No. I'm sorry. You go ahead, Carlo, because you're right. He talked about it being a team concept, not just an individual. That's what McGrady was talking about.
And then he said some stars don't get the criticism, but he got it. And then they brought up the Miami Heat and the San Antonio Spurs. I can go back further. Miami and Dallas, that first year the big three were together.
Yeah.
I remember this vividly. Dwayne Wade chewed out LeBron. Something that happened on the court. Later comes out that he told him to take charge. And LeBron just went in a shell after that. And of course, Dallas won. But it's a team. It's not But what is your definition in the chat room of a superstar?
Yeah.
How many rings? I disagree. I think you can be a great player and a champion without a ring.
I agree with that.
Yep.
But unfortunately, that's just the culture we're in today. It's all about championships. These athletes are making so much money. The assumption is that they ought to be able to carry their team to a championship, but it's a lot more to it than that. And so I think that's kind of where this is right now. I mean, LeBron making a ton of money, Halliburton, these other guys making a ton of money, and you assume that because they're in that spotlight, they ought to be able to carry that mantle to a championship. Not always the case.
Well, I think the owners, if they paying that much and they getting it, they making money too.
They are.
And they have to have some responsibility by putting together a good franchise, a good team, a good general managers. I'm talking about the owners now. But we shall see. Now, Durant, that's the big question. Where is he going? I'll go first. I'm a Miami Heat fan. Now, Roy may disagree, but I thought he was shaking his head that he's going to agree with this. He's 37 years old. I think he would be better going to a team that wants to win now. It's Miami, San Antonio, Minnesota's mentioned, and Houston. I know Miami likes to win now, but my opinion, I would go ahead and start rebuilding like OKC did when their big three left. The management put together some great pieces, and I wouldn't go with Durant. Roy, what you say?
I completely agree with you on that fact, but Miami doesn't need to rebuild. We just need we don't have a superstar. We've had some all-star players in Bam and Tyler, but neither one Bam, because he's just not that position. He doesn't control. He doesn't have his hands on the ball enough.
Yeah.
Well, and he doesn't have his hands on the ball enough. And Tyler Hero is just going to be inconsistent. He's going to be a really good player. I don't see Tyler now. He went up after Pat got in his grill last year about not being there. He did exactly what he was supposed to do. He came back, had a better season, and did what he was supposed to do. I think that's his ceiling. We saw what he was capable of doing without a consistent number one ahead of him. And we need to get one of these young players from one of them other teams that didn't make it. They're looking personally. I think the ideal player for Miami is Trae Young out of Atlanta. If we get a point guard that can actually score as well and still has a 7 to 8 assist distribution point, that team would be critical. All these people, we don't know. Again, nobody's going to want to play us because our defense always is going to be at the top. Our offense the last 3 years just hasn't been able to match up.
But if you had a shot at getting that kind of guy, Roy, you know who that is or know that was?
Tell me Damian Lillard. Oh, conspiracy.
We didn't do that. That wasn't on us. That was the league and the Portland Trailblazers. They wouldn't trade him to us. So
conspiracy.
What are you, Charles? That wasn't us. We were waiting for Lillard to come through. They did not want to trade him to Miami. We're in that point again where they don't want the Heat getting too good. Because look,
that goes back to when Chris Paul was supposed to be going to the Lakers. And
it's happened before. It's happened before.
They stopped that.
That's right.
If a superstar player wants to go to a certain place and he's had goodwill with that organization, that player should go to that place. Dame wanted to go to Miami.
In a perfect world.
And that was Portland. That was a Portland issue. It had nothing to do with Miami.
Well, let me ask you this.
We offered a fair trade for him.
Now,
back to Durant. He's got a lot of coins coming his way, and he's got to go to
extension. We don't need Durant. He right. On our team. But we need a young guy.
No, I agree. I agree. But what I'm saying with that money, you can get 2 up and coming young stars. What's the guy from Golden State that's been misused? Help me out, Coach Featherway. No, he's about 6'9", 6'10".
Yeah, I know.
I can't think of his name.
Domingo. What's his name?
That's close. Yeah.
You didn't play down the stretch.
Yeah, and Trae Young. And Trae Young. You can get both with that money.
Right. Here's the thing that I say with Durant. He should not go to a team where they have to give up too much. Because if they had to give up too much, they're still not going to win.
He's going to be in the same position he in.
Right. Yeah. Right.
He probably should go to Houston.
But even going to Houston, you cannot give up all them young players. They got to have depth. Houston is where they are now because they play a lot of people. Right? Mm-hmm. Now, if you got to give up some of those people just to get Durant, no.
Yeah, because he's gonna have load management. He's not gonna play all them minutes coming up.
Right.
But here's a question for me, Carlos and Roy and Heat fans. I think Carlos, you mentioned that it's time for the Heat to tear it down.
Rebuild. Do you think Roy disagrees with that? But
do you think that Heat fans, Pat Riley, and or are they humble enough to realize that maybe that it's time? The Miami Heat culture might think that, we're still one of the middle road teams, not one of the top tier. You're not top shelf.
No, we know that.
When you tear it down, you're tearing it down. You're talking about a little bit of futility. You're talking about taking steps back, and that's just, you don't associate that.
That's not happening in Miami. Culture. And let me tell you why though, because what you have to do
OKC did it.
And Coach, this is but Carlos, we're talking about OKC.
Roy, it took them. It didn't happen like that. But
they had it. They had to get better coach. They went through 2 series of good players and decent coaches before their ownership figured it out.
Right.
That was
teams and a lot of draft.
They had no culture. Yeah, they had no culture. The difference is when you talk about what you've got going on in Miami, like I say, yeah, I agree with you, Charles. We are not a top tier team. We are still one of the top teams in defense when you look at what we do. The difference is when you start forecasting and looking, well, one, it's become extremely difficult to forecast too far out in these drafts now because we're getting so many European players and all that stuff. You don't see anybody worth tearing it down for. Like, do you don't see anybody like next year? Who do we look at in college basketball or overseas and be like, yeah, we gonna shut it down this year to get this guy next year? There's nobody to do that for. Yeah. And because of everything that you guys have literally just finished talking about as it relates to these other teams and saying that we don't have as many, and I would say we don't have as many superstars in the league as we did previously. Because previously, I would say, and when we say previously, let's go back to the 90s era. Every team had a superstar.
Better basketball player.
Every team doesn't have a superstar now.
Right.
Every team, they got a lot of, like to Charles' point, there's a lot of teams where players make a lot of money because now the market has overcorrected itself and you're not paying all these guys an exorbitant amount of money because they look like they have these flashes. Tyler Hero, perfect example. Tyler Hero, I think, would be a microcosm look at every player that leaves the Miami Heat system. He will go somewhere else and either be worse than what he is or non-existent.
Yeah, it's the system that makes him good. It's the system that makes him good. And Carlos, to your point, Kuminga is the kid you were talking about.
Yeah.
Jonathan Kuminga from Golden State. If you're saying if you get him and Trae Young, that will elevate Miami. Mm-hmm. Right. I think it would be an improvement if you can get both of those. You got to have somebody else to go with Bam.
Well, no. We got Khalil Ware. We don't need anybody.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, you got.
That's how we need a point guard.
And I would not need a point guard. And Roy, I would not give up Ware
for nobody.
No,
nobody. Nobody. No, Khalil Ware right now. I would do to keep your culture right and to keep players hype about you. I would do a sign and trade with Tyler. I'll give Tyler all that money he owed and that he want to get rather, and then trade him because the salaries are gonna have to match anyway.
Yeah, I mean
to get somebody like a Trae Young in, because again, look, I'm telling you, you get the right point guard and you put Khalil Ware and Bam down there in the post. Oh, they gonna eat all day long, baby. Yeah, tell him, coach.
Well,
tell him, coach.
Yeah, but
I'm thinking about Trae Young. Is he a true point guard?
Yes,
he likes to shoot. He likes to shoot that rascal.
Carlos, he has no choice. There's a difference between being the true point guard and having to score.
Right.
He can do both.
He is a true point guard, but he has to score those points for Atlanta.
Yep.
That's what he has to do. He gets somewhere where he can listen. If he can throw it to the other four players on the team, and he's not worried about them making the shot from their position, he gonna have a ball.
Yeah. Only thing about him, he's a liability sometimes on the defensive end. But
we can cover that up. We've done that. How many people come to Miami that we cover that up for?
Okay, you're right.
Come on now, that team defense, baby. That's our thing. So yeah.
Yeah, but to Charles, maybe the Lakers should get Durant. Miami, I don't want him.
Yeah, Durant needs to go somewhere. Like Durant to go to any one of the other 4 teams that didn't make it from the last 2 rounds. He needs to go to he needs to go to a team that's contending that made it to the semifinals at least.
Well, wait a minute. How about he's listed 4 teams? So we say Miami out. Who do you see him the best fit with? San Antonio,
Houston.
Minnesota?
Houston,
okay.
He
would be a good fit if Houston did not have to give up too much to get him. He could be the veteran in that locker room, but if they give up too much, they're not going to get over the hump.
Yeah. He's in a tough situation then, it looks like.
Yes, he is.
But is Kevin Durant chasing money or is he chasing a title? So does Kevin Durant need to take a step back and say, look, he's made over $200 million or whatever it is. A figure came out because of how much money he's made. Is he trying to chase money at 37 or is he trying to chase a ring?
He should be a ring. He should be
so if you're chasing a ring and you take a step back a little bit financially to be able to be on a roster in which they can help you win another ring. I think Houston would be a really good example. I mean, I mentioned Miami, the Lakers. I don't know what the Lakers are doing. I mean, they've been sold. I don't know what's going to happen with LeBron, how interested he is. I mean, I don't know, but I think KD, if he's willing to take a step back financially, which he probably is not, I think Houston will be a really good fit for him. I can see that.
Well, there's another piece to this. The team he goes to will have to give him an extension.
And that's what I'm saying.
So you're not on the one. You want a 1-year assassin? Then he's moving again. Yeah, I'm out. I'm out for Miami. No. I'm looking to the future.
Yeah. But I can't ever remember a time, Carlos, in which we can say the Miami Heat might have to take steps back. Pat Riley says he's 81. He feels like he's 41. He said, we ain't doing that. We going full throttle in terms of building this roster. And
he wants to win championships.
He wants to win championships. But how far are the Heat closer to the Chicago Bulls, or are they closer to the Indiana Pacers?
So I was actually just about to say that, Charles. Anybody that doesn't look at it and honestly believe that our team isn't closer to being in the playoffs and being a real contender than being out is just a hater. Let's just say that what it is. Because we've got the talent. And here's the thing. Miami is just like a place like New York and like LA in the sense you can't tear it down there. You've got to find a way to rebuild quickly because you can't have 2 or 3 years of half your stadium being full. Right. People in Miami will find something else to do if they losing too much.
There's other things to do.
They will not come to those games. And so that's why we have to do it. You know, when unless you can find a way to catch lightning in the bottle and draft, you know, we thought we've had the next Dwayne Wade, I think 4 different times. I know one of them was Justice Winslow. What was the other kids? I mean,
is he even still in the league?
They think Tyler. I don't know why they ever thought Tyler. I just never, because he just didn't play defense enough for me for the Miami system. But, you know, we've had several players that we drafted that they thought were going to be the next iteration of that or that we got early. And so now that's what, and like I said, I think the game is too watered down. And you're going to have to find those players. Like, I don't think we're going to get that in the draft because I just think it's way too much to, again, try to catch that lightning in the bottle. I think we're going to have to get somebody after their first rookie contract. It's going to be like, you know what? This team ain't going to do it for me. Let me make my way down to Miami.
And that is why I would look at other young players that are up and coming. And I will also say this. Yeah, their culture set up where they want to win and they have to win. Spolsters, but what I've seen the last couple of years, are kind of stuck in neutral. Mm-hmm. And so
we haven't listen, as much as I love Jimmy Butler can be, and I'm gonna use the superhero analogies. Jimmy Butler can be Batman as long as Superman is sitting in the back pocket.
Right.
When he Batman and you got the Flash over there, you got Aquaman over there, he ain't gonna be able to do but so much because he just can't do that. He can't do more. You know, that's why when he went down there with the Warriors, I mean, he has Steph there. He's able to sit back and pick his points and pick his places to do that. We need, like I said, we've got to have a number one. We got a bunch of 2s and 3s right now. We don't have a clear number one on our team.
Now, the way you analyze that part, now I can get with it. Yep. What you just said, got a lot of number 2s and 3s. Yeah. And to make the next step up. And you won't find it in the draft, Coach Pettaway, right away. Yep. Those are long-term projects. Well, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. Oh, EA, stop it. Knicks. What a dumb move they did. Fired the man and nobody in place. Anybody they contact, tell them no. Yeah. Tell them no. Yeah, I'm a hater. All right. Well, Roy, here we go. Roy, Miami's not a sports town.
Yeah, you're right. Miami's not a sports town. Miami's just a great city that people from New York move to when they get tired of that nonsense.
We gotta get EA on the show. Maybe we should have some of the people in the chat room to come on
the show.
We can put a face to all of this beautiful conversation. I want to thank Roy for producing today's show. I want to thank everybody in the chat room. Charles, I'm going to kick back and watch a little NCAA College World Series. Oh, my neighbor told me stop hating on LSU. Coastal Carolina, not going to get it done. But it should be a great series.
It's going to be a great series, yes.
Yeah.
We'll see you next Saturday at 11 a.m. for another edition of the Carlos Brown Show right here on the Black College Sports Network. Until next time, peace and God bless.
All right, fellas. Have a good one.